Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm 15 years old. Are you familiar with the situation when everyone around you believes stupid rumors about you? And because of this, your whole life is ruined, no matter what you do or how you defend yourself? This type of situation happened to me. Everyone thinks I gave birth. Watch this video to the end, and you will find out what people come up with when you have breast milk at 15. Since I was a child, I grew not in height, but in breadth. No, my parents didn't feed me. I just have a predisposition to fatness, to fullness, and to sweetness. By the time I was 14, my doctor diagnosed me as obese. He strongly recommended sending me to a health camp. But it wasn't all that much fun at camp. It started with the fact that we were forced to walk part of the way to the camp. But when we finally reached the camp, it turned out that this was only the beginning. No amenities, no civilization, just us, the counselors, and only one goal: to survive. I thought this was a health camp, not a prison. God, why did this place have to be so awful? But soon, I met Zach. Zach didn't leave me and helped me. I managed to get to know him better. It turned out that we were from the same school. He was just a year and a half older, and we did not notice each other before. Have you ever met a person who you looked at and immediately thought, here is my chance, and I will not miss it? Zach and I started dating. Time passed quickly. My shift was over, and Zach still had to take a course on how to become popular. I was so afraid that he would forget me, or meet another girl who could outshine me. When I got home, I realized why they were saying, if you want to lose weight, fall in love. I almost stopped eating, counting the minutes until our meeting. After an eternity, Zach called. He asked me out on a date. Oh God, damn, finally! I put on my best dress, did my best hair and makeup, all for him. We met. During this time, his posture straightened a little, and confidence increased. But as soon as we met, we heard a nasty, nasty laugh. They were bullies from my school. What? Did I forget to tell you about them earlier? Oh, these guys had been bullying me about my weight since elementary school, but I've learned to stand firm and never pay attention to them. However, it was a real test for Zach. Even though I lost weight, I was still called fat at school. It infuriated Zach. He wanted to be popular, and I was ruining everything. To encourage him, I decided to take desperate things and move to a more adult stage of the relationship. Zach avoided me at school, so I waited until we were alone and I kissed him like an adult. After that, we started kissing all the time. I thought it would help me feel less bad about Zach's popularity, but I was so wrong. When they realized I wasn't responding, the bullies decided to take on Zach. They were laughing. What do you see in the fat shorty? Is she your little sex slave? Zach lied without batting an eye. Yes, she's just my sex slave. And everything collapsed. Bullies had a new respect for Zach. Thus, he finally realized his dream and became popular. I couldn't stand it and left him. Zach was afraid for his popularity and told everyone that he had left me after catching me cheating. I was used to ignoring the taunts, but I didn't expect this from Zach. He broke my heart. At home, news was waiting for me. My mother got pregnant. Apparently, while I was in the camp, My parents did not waste time in vain. Well, I started the lazy routine of school, home, school again. To make my mother happy, my father constantly brought home various sweets. How do you deal with stress? I did what I was best at, stealing my mother's sweets and eating my heart out. One day at school, one of the bullies said, "Hey, Lisa looks like she's pregnant by the guy she cheated on Zach with. Look how she's blown up." And that's Zach again. They managed to find my sore spot, and I began to eat stress, which made me even fatter than before. Soon I was called to the principal, and he asked me a question. "Lisa, there are rumors that you are pregnant. Is it true?" This was the last straw for me. I went on a strict diet with a minimum number of calories at maximum load. In the summer, I started doing sports in the backyard, just like in camp. And soon, my mother gave birth to my little sister, Nancy. One morning, I woke up and noticed that my entire nightgown was wet. It turned out that my chest started to drip milk. At the appointment, the doctor took some tests, and I was diagnosed with a hormonal imbalance. My weight surges caused my hormones to go off, and this led to the production of milk in my breast. The treatment should have given results only after a long time. I used to walk with Nancy in the park, and there I accidentally ran into a group of bullies. The next day, the whole school thought I had a baby. This time, the principal called our entire family. He listened carefully to my parents, then insisted on calling the entire school together for recess, and finally stopping the spread of rumors. I still can't really explain what happened. Nancy, for some reason, began to reach out to me, struggling and crying. Maybe she was afraid of the microphone? My mother said something like, "Do you want to eat? Be patient. Your mother will feed you at home." And then I felt like I was leaking. The milk poured out of my breast, so as never before. Apparently, there was so much milk that the pads could not cope. I should have run away immediately, but instead I stopped dead in my tracks. Someone from the audience, and I know for sure who, shouted, "Lisa's milk is running. We got it. You don't have to go on. Let her feed her daughter. Just don't do it in front of anyone, or we might be sick." But no one laughed. I saw everyone fall into an awkward silence, searching for the one who had shouted it. The principal immediately ran onto the stage, thanked my mother and my entire family, kissed Nancy on the forehead, and dismissed all the students. No one has laughed at me since. Apparently, they got what they wanted. Because of what happened, they decided that the rumor was true and realized that there was no reason to laugh. But on the contrary, they needed to be involved and ready to help. Soon, I was greeted by Zach's former friends, and he was afraid to show his face to me. There was no trace of his popularity. He was eclipsed by a single mother, proud as a lioness, the queen of her school. And though all pretended that they believed the statement of my mother, there was no doubt that Nancy is my daughter. I tried to change their minds, really. After that, the principal told me that he would help me get into a very prestigious university. Apparently, he was still ashamed of the incident on the stage. I just gave up. People will always believe what they want to believe, even the most stupid rumors that are confirmed by coincidences. And if so, to hell with these people and their gossip. I have a younger sister to take care of and a prestigious university to go to. Do you believe the rumors? And how often in your life have there been coincidences that have influenced the opinion of others about you? Tell us about it in the comments and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss news stories.
Hi, my name is Vicky. I'm 14. Have you ever felt dependent on something? I can't live an hour without the internet. Someone smokes. Someone cannot live without shopping. Others constantly chew something. And I'm dependent on social networks. Watch my story to the end, and you will find out what a person will do if he is abruptly deprived of access to the drug. I live with my parents, and they are categorically against social networks. My mother says that soon virtual reality will consume me. What these folks don't understand, they even do not know how to use smartphone properly. Imagine, they only need a phone for phone calls. Do you use all the functions of your gadgets? So the principal of my school is just as old-fashioned. She bans students from using the internet during classes, as if she doesn't understand that social networks are much more interesting than some rotten physics. I couldn't put up with the ban. I quickly gathered like-minded people and organized a real protest. The teachers ignored us, so I decided to draw attention to myself and threw a rock at the gym window. I think I misjudged it a little, and the rock flew right straight through the window of the principal's office. Oops. Oh, I got scolded for it. Enraged, the principal called my parents to the school and said that if I didn't improve, she would expel me and make it so that I wouldn't even be allowed to wash the floors. Have your parents ever been called to school? Then you will understand me for sure. At home, my dad yelled at me and said that now I would stay in my room for a week without the internet. My dad took my phone, laptop, and tablet away from me. I was in shock. I didn't think so. I would give them such a nightmare that they would still try to persuade me to return to my virtual world. As soon as Dad left, Mom brought me a drawing kit, a chess set, and a chocolate bar. Sweet? Games? Are you kidding me? I decided to go on a hunger strike until I get at least my smartphone back. My stomach was already rumbling, but I held my ground. To frighten my mother and father, I began to smash up the room. If my dad locked me up, I would just tear the place down. My mother stuck stubbornly at the door, telling me to at least stop yelling. I enjoyed making my parents angry and hearing my mother jump back when I kicked the door. In the evening, I was practically tired of being locked up. I had the idea of escaping through the window. And why hadn't I thought of that before? My escape was not successful. My father intercepted me. As punishment, he locked me in the bathroom and told me it was for my own good. How could he do this to me? Sleeping in the bathroom was terribly uncomfortable. In the morning, I felt completely exhausted. I remembered that I hadn't eaten since yesterday. My hunger made me even more angry with my parents. To relax a little, I got into the hot water. Soon, I thought I heard strange voices. They were clearly somewhere nearby. Was I going mad? No, it's just my torturers talking and laughing in the kitchen as if nothing had happened. They didn't care that their daughter would soon go crazy without the internet. While I was lying in the water and catching glitches, one of my parents slipped a note under the door. They told me to meditate. How dare they? Keep dreaming. I would win back my right to the internet, no matter what it would cost me. I spent the next 2 hours running around in the bathroom, plotting my revenge. How to convince my ancestors that I couldn't live without a smartphone. Anyway, nothing more brilliant than to pretend that I felt that. I would make a big noise. I was going to accidentally knock on the door, so my mom would come up and check on me, and then I'd pretend to faint. My plan failed. Preparing for a demonstration of fainting, I decided to break the mirror with my hand and cut myself badly on the shards. Scared, I screamed and started calling for my mother like a little girl. When my mother saw me up in my ears in blood, she almost fainted from fright and immediately began to help. While my mother treated my hand, I was ashamed of my own weakness. So, with a clear conscience, I sent my father to hell because he offered to read me a fairy tale. I would show him later how to remember about childhood. On the morning of the third day without the internet, I was tired of my own idleness, so I started reading. It had been a long time since I picked up a book. Reading fascinates me, and I looked up from the book only in the evening. Before I went to sleep, I listened to my parents' voices in the kitchen. I wondered what they were talking about. Probably about how bad their daughter was. I suddenly remembered how scared they were when they saw my bloodied hand. I think I went too far and treated my parents too harshly. Have you ever regretted your actions? On the fourth day, I decided to stop bullying my parents and change my tactics. I would talk to them, explain to them why I need the internet. And they would definitely meet me halfway. For half a day, I came up with solutions to protest my internet addiction. With the pros of life on the internet, I came up quickly, but stalled on the cons. I suddenly realized that I didn't know anything about life outside of the virtual world. So, for the next 2 days, I explored real life. I was doing everything I could in a locked room. I cleaned up, finished reading the book, went through my wardrobe, and even finished painting a picture that I had started a year ago. My mother used a clever trick. She made my favorite pancakes with strawberries. I almost thanked her, but then I remembered that I was offended and my rebellion wasn't over yet. On the 6th night of my detention, I couldn't sleep. I suddenly thought how I could allow myself to relax. My parents were waiting for me to give up my position. They just didn't care what I thought. They had locked me up here like a criminal, and they brought me food by the hour, like in a prison. Angry again, I decided to escape from custody. This time, I would take everything into account, and my plan wouldn't fail. I went into the bathroom, turned on both taps, and put the plug. Let's see how they would deal with the flood. The water was rising fast. I was already ankle-deep in water. I hoped my parents would like the ceiling shower. Half an hour later, my parents ran into my room. While my father was busy with the taps and my mother was fussing, I quickly ran out the open doors. When I saw my phone on the kitchen table, I immediately grabbed it and ran out of the house. After running away from the house for half a kilometer, I safely disguised behind garbage cans and finally went online. While I was in isolation, my friends managed to post so many new photos. I couldn't get that many likes in my entire life now. I didn't even notice that I'd been on the internet for hours. Damn, what had I become? I was sitting in the trash and liking photos. There was probably water all over the house by now. What if Mom and Dad couldn't do it without me? I was the one who caused the flood with my own hands, and we had only recently finished repairs. It was dark when I got home. I slipped through the door and peered into the kitchen. Dad and Mom drank their coffee in silence. They were tired. They had circles under their eyes. And Mom looked tearful. I didn't even pay attention to it. I was very ashamed of my indifference. I plucked up the courage to apologize. My father didn't scold me. My parents invited me to the table, and my father made me a coffee. When my mother saw that I was all right, she brightened up. It turned out that Dad, as a teenager, also almost flooded the house. It infuriated him that his parents wouldn't let him go to a rock concert, so he decided to start a flood in protest. Yes, it must be hereditary. We chatted for more than an hour. I never thought my parents were so interesting. You can laugh at Dad's joke to the point of tears. And Mom recently watched a movie I had only heard about. I didn't even know she was following the latest movies. To patch things up, we decided to go to the movies as a family. It was interesting because I used to watch movies only on the internet. When I woke up on the 7th day, I felt for the first time that I didn't go to social networks. Even though my phone was lying peacefully next to my bed, my dad hadn't taken it away. Previously, I would have immediately started writing to friends and viewing the accounts of friends, but now I decided to turn off the phone altogether so as not to be distracted. After all, they say that meditation requires concentration. After 7 days without internet, I realized that the real world was not as boring as I thought. I used to be some kind of robot that could only post and count likes. Now, I can spend time with a family that loves me and needs me. I'm still ashamed in front of my parents for behaving so terribly. Fortunately, they forgave me. I would very much like you to be able to spend time with your family and friends and in reality, not online. If you like my story, then like and subscribe to the channel. Enjoy each and every day.
Hi, my name is Crystal. I'm 20 years old. Have you ever dated a guy who is much older than you? Did you find a common language easily? How did you feel around an adult man? Watch this video to the end and you will find out how I married my boyfriend's grandfather. Actually, I always liked my peers or a little older guys. My boyfriend Sean is 22 years old. We've been together for a couple of years and we're planning to get married this year when Sean graduates from college. The wedding is an important step to us and we are both looking forward to it. After successfully passing the final exams, Sean immediately got a job in his specialty in a bank. On this occasion, he arranged a cool party at which he publicly proposed to me and gave me a ring. I was very excited. Sean's parents promised to help with the wedding and take most of the expenses themselves. We set a date. Sean wanted to have a party at the cafe where we first met. It was so romantic. The cafe was in a nearby town, and Sean and his parents drove there to pay the rent and discuss the wedding menu. I really wanted to go with them, but they wouldn't let me go from work. I was terribly worried and hoped that everything would go smoothly. I looked at my phone every 10 minutes and waited for a word from Sean, but he didn't call me. Have you ever been worried about waiting for an important call? And how did you handle this excitement? In the evening, I already dialed myself and a strange woman picked up the phone. She introduced herself as a police officer and said that there was a serious accident and they were dead. The woman asked who I was to Sean. I fell into a stupor. A lump stuck in my throat. My whole life collapsed in an instant. I barely said my name and introduced myself as Sean's fiancée and started sobbing on the phone. The woman interrupted me and said that the young man was alive, but in a critical condition in the city hospital. I wanted to be near my beloved Sean as soon as possible. I went to the hospital. Sean was unconscious in the intensive care unit. The doctor said that he fell into a coma, but there was hope that his condition would improve. The doctors were doing everything they could. An elderly man, about 65 years old, was sitting next to Sean's bed. He introduced himself as Sean's grandfather, named Robert. He also arrived at the hospital when the police called him. Sean's parents were dead. I offered my condolences. A few days later, Sean was transferred to a hospital in our city, and I took a leave of absence from work to be with him all the time. Robert was also a frequent visitor to the hospital. One day, when Robert and I were sitting in the room, the doctor came to us and said that Sean's condition had deteriorated. There was a chance that he would not wake up again. I couldn't stop myself from crying. The doctor left us alone. Robert put his arm around me and started stroking my back, and I felt better. He kissed me on the forehead. It touched me, but then suddenly his lips moved to mine and I pushed him away. There was an awkward pause. He apologized, said he just wanted to comfort me. Now I was avoiding Robert. I was alerted by his unexpected kiss. 1 month passed. On one of my regular visits to the hospital, the doctor again reported news that alarmed me. Sean's insurance would soon not cover his life support, and we would have to pay for his continued hospital stay on our own. Otherwise, Sean would be turned off. The doctor's words sounded like a nightmare. I went straight to Robert to discuss it. Robert had to make the decision as the closest relative. He was already aware, and in a completely calm tone, said that Sean would have to be turned off since the family had no money at all. All the savings were spent on preparations for the wedding. I was afraid that my beloved's life was hanging by a thread. I begged him to wait another week, promising that I would find the money. The thought of losing Sean forever terrified me. Robert said that I had another week, and then Sean's insurance would no longer cover the hospital expenses. The countdown started. I published information about fundraising in social networks, applied to a charity fund, and borrowed money from close friends. I had to sell the ring that Sean gave me. I was willing to sacrifice everything for his life. I collected enough money in a week, but I was just a little short of the required amount, and I had nowhere else to take it. I was hoping that Robert would help me because this was his own grandson. Have you ever asked for a loan? And have you asked those who were unpleasant to you? I tearfully asked Robert to add the missing amount. He agreed unexpectedly quickly and said that there were some papers to sign before doing so. I didn't care as long as Robert helped and I saved my Sean. We went straight to the notary. I didn't think it would be so formal and serious, but I had no choice but to agree. The notary gave me the documents and I read them quickly. It looked like a normal contract, but I was wrong. When I read the title again, I realized it was a prenuptial agreement between Robert and me. I jokingly asked if the notary had made a mistake in the document, and Robert said that everything was accurate. I had to sign this agreement and commit to being Robert's legal wife so I didn't run away with all the money. But if I didn't agree, he couldn't help me. I loved Sean very much and didn't want to lose him. I needed his grandfather's money. I signed the damn papers. Robert added the missing amount and I transferred the money to the hospital. The agreement didn't change much in my life. I lived with my parents, visited Sean in the hospital, and hardly saw Robert. Another month passed. Finally, Sean began to change for the better. And one day, he regained consciousness. I was insanely happy to look into his open blue eyes. I had been waiting for this so much. I told him about the accident and his parents' deaths, but he didn't remember anything. This news stunned him, and he could not hold back his tears. I sat with him all night. I didn't want to leave him like this. A week later, the doctor said that Sean could go home. We left the hospital with him, and I took care of him at home. It was easy for me because I loved him and wanted to be there all the time. The only thing that bothered me was that Robert was living with us. He managed the house and supported us, so I tried to contain my negative feelings towards him. But one day, Robert said that I was not fulfilling my marital obligations. He said that if I ignored him as my legal spouse, he would ban me from seeing Sean and throw me out of the house. What the hell? After all, initially we had completely different conditions. I wasn't ready to throw myself into an older man's arms, all the more into his. Ugh, even thinking about this was disgusting. Naturally, I refused him, but something told me that I should be on my guard tonight. Night fell. I couldn't sleep, and when Robert appeared at the door, I abruptly got out of bed and asked him to leave my room. He began to approach me more slowly and say that it was not appropriate for a wife to communicate with her husband in this way. That made me feel sick. And then another shape appeared in the doorway, and it was Sean. I was glad that Sean started walking. I knew that Robert was going to get hurt, but Sean fell unconscious. I called an ambulance and drove away with him, away from Robert. When Sean came to, I started to hug him, and he pushed me away. Sean said he heard his grandfather and I talking about kissing and getting married. He accused me of being a traitor and said he didn't want to see me again. I was sorry to hear that because it was all for his sake. I asked Sean to listen to me and told him about the money collection and the prenuptial agreement. I was sorry I signed it, but I would do anything for Sean. Sean listened to me and said that he would do anything to protect me from his grandfather. Sean knew that his grandfather had been disliked in the family, and now he understood why. Sean was in the hospital for another month, and then he got better. I helped him collect the legal papers, and he no longer needed custody. Sean came home, kicked his grandfather out, and inherited. It turned out that Sean's family still had money, and Robert was lying to me. We are going to terminate the prenuptial agreement in court and have already hired a lawyer. We decided to postpone the wedding after everything that happened. I moved in with Sean for good, and for myself, I realized that for the sake of saving the life of a loved one, I am ready to do a lot. I was happy that Sean and I were together again, and love would help us overcome all the difficulties. If you are touched by my story, please like and subscribe to my channel. Have a good day, and may all your loved ones be healthy.
Hi, I'm Vivian and I'm 19. Are you willing to give up sleep for $1,000? I haven't slept for 10 days in a row. Watch the video to the end and you will find out how this experiment will end and how you feel on the 10th day. Please do not repeat what you see. It is dangerous for your health and life. One day, Sharon and Kimberly reminded me how I brag about being able to sleep for only 3 to 4 hours. And they dared me and asked if I would be able not to sleep at all. And I had to say yes. We bet $1,000 that I will break the official Guinness World Record for staying awake and not sleep for more than 11 days. I really needed the money and I agreed. All this time, I had to stay in my own apartment and webcast on social media. I was allowed to go to the toilet for a maximum of 5 to 7 minutes and to the shower for 15 minutes. Actually, Sharon and Kimberly even wanted me to sit in the bathroom with a camera. But I flatly told them no way. The first 3 days of the experiment went well in terms of physical condition. But psychologically, it was hard. There were still so many days ahead, and what would I do all this time? To pass the time, I called all my friends and family. Then I read, but it was a bad idea because reading immediately made me sleepy. Google suggested that you should chew gum, turn on the air conditioner to get cold, or put on uncomfortable clothes. How do you fight the urge to sleep? Share it in the comments. Maybe next time I'll use your life hacks. The audience was initially so small that I wanted to finish the experiment. But for the sake of a small number of subscribers who supported me and wrote comments, I continued. Well, I really needed the money. Starting from the 4th day, the views increased dramatically. I became popular. I was even mentioned by several major vloggers. This gave me the strength and desire to continue. I received a lot of messages from strangers. Some praised me, some scolded me. Haters also did not miss the opportunity to humiliate and insult me, the audience, and the whole world. By the end of the 5th day, Alan, a medical student, started watching my experiment. He supported me, kept me awake at night, and engaged me in long conversations on Skype. This helped me a lot on the 6th and 7th day when I wanted to sleep like hell. I shared the details of how I felt with him. And in general, I liked our communication. In addition, as a doctor, he suggested what foods I should eat to keep the brain working and what things I should do. It helped, although sometimes, on the contrary, I felt very tired and almost fell into a heavy sleep. On the 8th day, my health deteriorated all of a sudden. At first, I heard my mother talking to me, even though my parents live 100 kilometers away. I was terrified. Then, a sudden sense of impending death came over me, as if I was going to die right now. I told Alan about this, and he suddenly became nervous and told me to stop the experiment immediately. He yelled like a madman, spit almost flying through the screen. He shouted that my body couldn't stand it. I turned off Skype and gave up on him. And 2 hours later, the ambulance came to my door. I had to explain to the doctors that I was only slightly ill. In short, I frankly lied to them, so they left as soon as possible. After that, I called my friends, and they told me that Alan wanted to cheer me up and send me a delivery of delicious food. And these fools, unaware of anything, gave the address. I was furious, accused him of not being a real doctor, and told him that he didn't understand anything about it and therefore had no right to tell me what to do. To this, Alan said that he was actually engaged in neurophysiology and was writing a course paper on the influence of sleep and its absence on the body. He also admitted that he specifically asked me to do certain things to see the reaction, as if I was a guinea pig. I did not consent to be a lab rat for science. And you just admit it? I shouted. Then there was some babbling like, I'm ashamed, I want to fix everything, I'm sorry, stop the experiment. But after this, I hung up and banned all of his accounts. Have you ever wanted to kick down a door, break dishes and furniture out of anger? How did you stop yourself? The only thing that stopped me was that it was a rented apartment and nothing could be destroyed there. I decided to express all the pain of betrayal to my audience. But I could not do it. My heart ached, began to pound unevenly, my eyes darkened suddenly, and I sat down in a chair. There was an inexplicable feeling of fear, and then Alan appeared in front of me. He spoke in my mother's voice and called for dinner. The hallucinations didn't go away for a long time, so I turned on a movie on my laptop to banish the symptoms. I need money, I told myself. I really needed it. The fact was that my mom and dad recently lost their jobs due to the crisis. The allowance was not enough and I couldn't find a new job. So I agreed to do this bet because it was about a whole $1,000. The 9th day was even harder, mentally, physically, and psychologically. I didn't have the strength to hold on, so I just walked around the room in circles, and when I got tired of walking, I lay down on the floor. I didn't think about anything, but I felt an endless weight. My ears were ringing, and it was impossible to concentrate on anything. I was about to drop everything and go to sleep, but to my horror, my brain stopped sending the signal of, it's time to sleep. There was some kind of malfunction. The 10th day was the last in the experiment. My right side, heart, and head ached terribly. The light hurt my eyes, my arms, legs, and head were shaking, and my hallucinations were getting worse. At some point, it seemed to me that burglars were breaking into the apartment and I began to yell wildly. Then, I remember nothing. Total darkness. I woke up in the hospital on a drip and, surprisingly, in excellent condition. Sharon and Kimberly were there. They told me that they came running to me as soon as I felt sick, but Alan was ahead of them. He injected me with something that sent me straight to sleep. My friends called the police, and he was taken to the police station for providing medical services without a license. I felt sorry for Alan. He suffered and really wanted to help. Immediately after I was discharged, I went to the police station to write a statement that I had no complaints against him. But, as it turns out, it wouldn't be that simple. I had to tell the police about the experiment, the bet with my friends for $1,000, Alan's suggestions to stop everything and me ignoring him. Even Sharon and Kimberly were questioned, and they already regretted that they had messed up the whole thing. After watching the last stream, the police were convinced that my life was really in danger, and Alan committed the crime to save me. They let him go, but it hardly made him feel any better. At his institute, they learned about the 10-day nightmare, Alan's secret tests, his advice, and so on. He was expelled. I thought all the agony was over, but it seemed to be just the beginning. Because of me, he lost his favorite business, the goal of his whole life. After all, he's not a bad person and really wanted to benefit science. He just didn't choose quite the right path. Alan told me to go to hell, banned me on all social networks, and finally, he cursed science. It was the worst day of my life, and I needed to fix it. I wrote a detailed letter describing the experiment and how Alan saved my life, and sent it to all medical institutions in the United States in the hope that they would accept him. I think it's better than nothing. I begged Alan to meet me. First, I asked him for forgiveness for all that horror, and he also sincerely apologized, by the way. And then I told him about my letters to several medical institutes. Alan was surprised and very happy that there was a way out of this situation. The story didn't end there. The situation with my parents was getting worse, and I asked my subscribers to help me find a job. And I found one. Even though it's temporary, this is the money that our family needs so much right now. Sharon and Kimberly gave me that $1,000 and apologized again. If you like the story, show it with the most determined like. Check out our channel more often. We regularly publish new stories for you. Subscribe and click the bell icon, then you will definitely not miss the next episode. I wish you a healthy sleep and a lot of happiness.
Hi everybody, I'm Sarah. I'm 17 and I'm an ordinary schoolgirl. Have you ever fought bad habits that put your life at risk of falling apart? Did your friends support you doing everything they could to help you break free of it? Please watch this video till the end and you'll find out why it's so important to take care of your body. In general, I've always taken good care of myself. Since my childhood, I have been playing sports and ate healthy, and I've certainly never had any addictions. At least up to one point. This story happened to my friend Kevin and me. We practiced parkour together, and those days we were just starting to participate in competitions. We were a solid team and got along well. In fact, when we started playing sports together and thereby communicating even more, I realized that I had feelings for him, but I didn't dare to confess. The thing is, we've been friends since our childhood, and I didn't think he'd see me more than just a friend. Have you ever fallen in love with a childhood friend and been afraid of telling the truth to your crush? We trained a lot, and as a result, we used to win small competitions in our district. We were so encouraged by our progress. But one day, everything started to change. We got invited to a big competition for the parkour teams from all over the state. I was shopping at the supermarket and grabbed a can of Coke. Back then, I allowed myself to drink a couple of cans a week. The saleswoman advised me to pay attention to the bottom of the can. The company carried out an advertising campaign for 5 cola boxes. The one who bought the can with the number 5 at the bottom was the winner. When I looked at the bottom of my tin, I was pleasantly surprised to find a big 5 there. I've never won anything like this before. Soon my winnings were delivered. My parents, seeing those boxes, shook their heads skeptically. They believed that even 1 can a week was not good for one's health, not to mention more. I assured them that I would not abuse fizzy beverages. However, with a box of Coke at hand, I didn't notice how I started drinking it constantly. It got to the point where I replaced my morning glass of water with Coke and stopped drinking anything except it at all. Meanwhile, Kevin and I started training for the competition. One day, we were practicing on the outskirts, and I found myself far behind him on the run. He came back to me and asked if something was wrong. I answered I was just tired. But that did not reassure him. Kevin told me I haven't been at my best lately. He said I started to stumble more often, to run slower, and I didn't look well. I refused to believe that. My mind denied everything he was saying and made various excuses. But deep down inside, I knew he was right. I really got addicted to cola. That moment, I realized that I had been drinking nothing but it for an entire week. No water, no coffee, no juice. Just Coke. Have you ever struggled with addiction that could seriously damage your health, but the habit seems stronger than your willpower? A few days later, the weakness increased. I became prone to restless, almost anxious sleep, so no matter how long I slept, I felt drowsy and often was late for training. I even put on weight, despite my active lifestyle. And yet I couldn't give up drinking some of those shiny red cans a day. My parents noticed that my Coke supplies were decreasing fast and claimed that I clearly consumed too much soda. But I lied to them, saying that I'm just sharing with my friends. Meanwhile, the first stage of the competition had come. We worked hard to get ready, but I was still worried. As we waited for our exit, Kevin tried to cheer me up. He assured me we could handle it and asked me how I felt. I replied that everything was okay. In fact, things were not even semi-okay. I felt myself on the verge of an epic fail. I was so nervous that I even spoke rude to Kevin when he asked again if everything was all right. At that moment, our way out was announced, and I saw that I had hurt his feelings. Oh, that made it all even harder. We entered the arena and started performing our well-rehearsed parkour stunts. At first, we were doing well. I saw that we were making a good impression on the audience and the jury. But at one crucial moment, a sudden stomachache came on. Kevin grabbed me and helped me out, and did it spectacularly. That has repeated several times. Only thanks to Kevin, we completed the performance. When the jury announced the scores, I hoped for nothing. But as it turned out, we scored enough to pass to the next stage. We hugged happily, and I apologized to Kevin for being rude. He was not touchy. We decided to take a walk, and on the way, I took a can of Coke out of my bag. When Kevin noticed this, he asked me if I drank a lot of soda. Actually, I said, I haven't been drinking anything else for the last couple of weeks. I told him how it came to this, and that I couldn't break the habit. He persuaded me to give it up for the sake of our team. Well, I agreed. What else was I supposed to say? But then again, the very same night, I couldn't resist a can of Coke before sleep. And the next morning, I reached for another one as if I was moved uncontrollable. I had 2 more boxes of that fizzy black poison, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make myself drink anything but it. Meanwhile, the next phase of the competition was every day closer. Kevin and I trained even more often because we barely made it last time. I felt worse and worse. I had stomach aches, my mood swings became bigger, but the scariest part was weight gaining. My parents also noticed my condition and believed no excuses anymore. But they didn't push me. They belonged to that kind of people who let their children make their own mistakes and learn from them. I was afraid to tell Kevin that I couldn't keep my promise. Because of this, I felt like I was moving away from him. Have you ever kept something from your friends because of fear of rejection? In the second stage, we miraculously once more scored points necessary to pass. And again, Kevin led the entire performance, while I just tried not to get in his way or fall. Thus, thanks to his efforts, we managed to reach the final. At that time, I had been addicted to Coke for a month and felt really crappy. I couldn't drag myself out of bed without at least 2 cans. Well, the very last day before the final competition had come, I stayed home to acquire strength. Suddenly, Kevin showed up. He said he came to cheer me up and invite me for a final rehearsal. As he walked through the living room, he accidentally tripped over a can of Coke, lying on the floor, looked at the can, and then looked at me. He calmly asked whether I had more soda. I didn't say a word, and my teammates started searching. I asked him to stop, but he didn't listen. He said that we have to try more radical ways to confront my addiction. Kevin found the remaining half a box under the sofa. With it, he went outside and started to pour cola onto the grass. I ran after him sobbing, begging him to stop, but he went on in silence. I was furious. I accused Kevin of being obsessed with winning and told him to compete without me. Upon hearing this, he threw the remaining cans on the ground and left. I believed I was right. My body, my rules. The next day, I was still mad at Kevin and didn't want to go to the competition, so I told him. Just as the final was about to begin, a mutual friend of ours called me. She asked where I was and said that Kevin was waiting for me. I told her what happened and complained that Kevin didn't care about me at all. My friend laughed. She said that Kevin was completely lost without me. Moreover, Kevin told her that he had a crush on me. I couldn't believe my ears and asked my friend if she was sure. She said yes, 100% sure. At that moment, I took a completely different view of everything Kevin did. I realized that he wasn't trying to win at all cost. Instead, he was worried about me. I promised my friend to come soon and hurried to get ready. I still could make it to our performance, so I ran as fast as I could. I arrived just at the moment when our team was being announced. Kevin happily smiled when he saw me. I smiled back, and we entered the arena together. Let's admit we performed poorly, and of course lost. It was already a miracle that we made it this far. But we didn't care. We made up, and I promised Kevin to break up with Coke forever. And I'm proud of saying that this time I managed to keep my promise. In the end, I realized that even though my body belongs to me, there are people who are hurt to watch how I destroy myself. That night, I told Kevin that I knew about his feelings and that it was mutual. He was happy. He confessed that he had been in love with me for years and just like me, was simply afraid to take the first step. We still practice parkour, but now we do it for ourselves, without tournaments and prizes. We realized that competitiveness is not our style. Sports were just our favorite way to spend time together. It took a while to get back on the rails after my soft drink abuse. I took my lifestyle more seriously and now follow a balanced diet that excludes any junk food. No more chips, fries, burgers, etc. Have you ever overcome your bad habits? Tell us in the comments. If you enjoyed my story, please like it. And to be the first to watch new stories, subscribe and push the bell. Stay tuned and have a nice day.